Okay, so we are going to talk about how to write dialogue and how to properly punctuate your dialogue. This is something that is expected for your creative writing assignment, so make sure that you are following along, and then when the presentation is over, that you go back into your document and make sure that you have correctly punctuated your dialogue. So when you have a direct quote, you want to use quotation marks at the beginning and the end. So for example, we have Linda said, quote, someone is following me, quote. Now, when you have an indirect quote, you do not use quotation marks. So if you're saying something like, Linda said that someone was following her, you aren't directly quoting exactly what Linda said to you, so you don't need to use quotation marks in that circumstance. For our writing, you need to have direct quotes. Okay, speech tags are the part of the dialogue that tells you who is speaking, and they can appear at the beginning, the middle, or the end of a quote. So here's an example in the beginning. We have the pilot said, fasten your seatbelts. It could also be at the end, fasten your seatbelts, the pilot said. It can also be in the middle, fasten your seatbelts, said the pilot, in case there is turbulence. So your speech tag can really go anywhere that you would like. And in some circumstances, if you already have established who is speaking, you don't necessarily have to use a speech tag every single time. Okay, so punctuation, this is the biggest place where we see errors. Commas usually separate quotes from speech tags. So your speech tag and your quote cannot go right next to each other. You have to have a comma in between them. So for example here, the pilot said, comma, fasten your seatbelts. Or fasten your seatbelts, comma, the pilot said. You have to have these commas separating the speech tag from your dialogue. It is absolutely required. You will always use a comma unless you would use an exclamation point or a question mark instead. So if you're having an exclamation, that belongs to me, exclamation point, she shouted. Or a question, is this yours, question mark, he asked. So those would be the only times when you wouldn't have to use a comma, but you never use a period. It's always a comma, an exclamation point, or a question mark. And you'll notice that again, we still have the dialogue separated from the speech tag. Punctuation is always going to go inside the quotation marks, not outside. So this is another issue that we have quite frequently. So we'll leave it halftime, comma, and then the quotation marks, said Gary, and then the period at the end. Or how do we get there, question mark, then the quotation marks, I asked, period. So make sure that you always have that inside of the quotation marks. If you have a divided quotation where you have the speech tag in the middle, then each part of the quote has quotation marks and you have commas separating the dialogue from the speech tag on either side. So for example, on the way, comma, Derek said, comma, we will pick up Kelly. Or at the plant, comma, Eric said, comma, we work in shifts. So just make sure that if you're putting the speech tag in the middle, that you have commas on either side. And again, you can see that the punctuation is inside the quotation mark here. To remember, periods are never allowed before a speech tag. Instead of a period, you always use a comma. Okay, you start a new paragraph each time the speaker changes. So even if I didn't have any speech tags, I know that this is a conversation between two different people, right? What are you doing Friday, says speaker A. I don't know, says speaker B. Speaker A then speaks, I'm grounded, so I have to stay at home and babysit my little brother. Speaker B says, that sucks. Okay, so each time the speaker changes, you have to have a new paragraph, okay? And that tells your reader, hey, this is someone else that's speaking. What we have happen a lot is that it's just all one run-on together, and as a reader, that's very hard to tell who is talking. So even if it's as short as I don't know, you're still going to hit enter and start that new paragraph. So again, here's another example. What are your favorite TV commercials? Christy asked. New paragraph. I like the commercials for Coca-Cola, replied Ted. New paragraph. Delia said, my favorites are Dr. Pepper and Pepsi. New paragraph. Some of them are better than the shows, added Christy. So you can see how each time when my speaker changes, I'm starting a new paragraph. I'm not just having the next sentence start directly after the speech tag. You always want to start that new paragraph each time. Okay, so that's it for punctuating dialogue. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to your teacher and let us know.